Which of these action cameras is best for scuba divers? We have the father of action cameras with the new GoPro Hero 13. We have the X4 from Insta360 with its 360 filming capabilities. It works underwater as well. Then we have the hotshot little brother, the Insta360 Ace Pro 2. And we have the up-and-coming DJI Osmo Action 5. And we actually have a $65 underwater action camera from Amazon. To help you out which of these is the best, we've taken all of these on numerous dives over the course of the last few months, both in blue, clear, tropical water and in mercury green, cold water diving. This was to ensure that we test these cameras in a range of different diving scenarios and to help you understand which of these underwater action cameras is the best for your scuba diving needs. Let's dive in. Hey, I'm Torben from DIVEIN.com. Here we test dive gear, we share insight tips of gear and destinations and a bunch of things to help you enjoy better diving. In this video, we're going to go through the specs of these cameras. We're going to go through some of the waterproof rating, both in and without the housings. We're going to go through the screen options. And then most importantly, of course, we're going to go through the underwater footage of all of these compared side by side. Before we dive deep into the review, let's just talk about an incredible giveaway we have here in this video. Before doing the review, we took all of these cameras on a trip to Egypt with Master Liveaboards. For all the stunning tropical dive clips you'll see in this video while we're doing the testing, they were all filmed aboard the Blue Melody Liveaboard. And now we're giving one of you a chance to experience this for yourself. That's right, we're giving away a free 7-night liveaboard trip for one person aboard either Master Liveaboard's Blue Horizon or the Blue Melody. This is valued at around $1,600. So imagine waking up every morning to a new dive site, crystal clear, beautiful water, world-class diving, and staying on board one of these boats. Later in the video, I'll tell you how you can win this fantastic trip with Master Liveaboards. All right, let's get back to the review. Before we run through all these cameras, there's a few things I want to show. So first off, the way we've been testing this is, of course, underwater. We try to compare them side by side, but in some of the dives, we were also just diving with one or two of them, but in similar conditions. Most of the footage you'll see is quite similar. Some is a bit different, but we try to show you how the footage is actually done and what kind of footage it gives you. All of these cameras, you can get footage straight out of the cameras. That is really good. Some of them has different settings. We try to keep the settings as similar as possible to do the comparison as simple as possible. Some will do 5.7K, some will do 4K, some will do 8K. We kept it all at 4K because we do believe that's the easiest way of editing afterwards for most. And then we have the $65 camera out here. I would love to show you all the footage, but reality is we can't because on the first dive of this one, it broke, it flooded. Before 5 minutes passed, this housing was completely flooded. Now you think we might have messed up, we might have, but the diver who was using it, Sylvia, she's been doing numerous of dives with underwater housings. She's been working as a professional underwater photographer, and I'm quite sure she knows how to do a check, an O-ring or a seal of a housing, and this one still broke. So we're gonna toss this one to the side. That's basically what you get when you're paying $65 for an underwater camera, and we're going to focus on the 4 main cameras I have here. Let's do a quick rundown of the specs. So when it comes to these 4 cameras, they are quite similar actually. As you can see here lined up, it's actually only the X4 that stands out a bit. Its longer shape accommodates for its 2 lenses. So it has 2 lenses of 210 degrees each, whereas all the other ones have just a single lens. But this is because it's doing underwater 360, and therefore the 2 lenses, well, it makes the whole image all the way around. It's actually, even in the underwater housing, making that invisible stitching, so you do get really nice underwater 360 footage. And that alone might persuade you to choose this camera because it is the only one we tested that does 360. But what about the other 3 cameras? Well, as you can see, they're reasonably similar. Field of view of the Ace Pro 2 and the Osmo Action 5 is 155, 175 degrees. The GoPro is a bit wider with 177 degrees, but when comparing the same scenes of each of the cameras on the wider setting, it isn't much to see. So you're really getting a one lens, really nice footage out of that one. For shooting modes, they all have photo, video, time-lapse, slow-mo, interval. And then there are some other modes like night stargaze. The X4 does a bullet mode, but since this is For underwater camera, we aren't including any of that because it's not possible to do the bullet mode or night gazing underwater. So what is important? There's a bunch of other specs and features of these cameras that you can really geek out about, sensor sizes, frame rates, of options of that as well, but we won't go too much into details on that. If you want to know more, I have a quick comparison chart here I'll put on the screen, or click the link in the description that'll take you to our underwater action camera guide. That one will help you out with specs and features as well, so check that one out. So what is really important here is, perhaps most importantly, is the waterproof rating. Now there's both without the housing and then there's with the housing. So depth rating for most entry-level certifications, whether it's PADI now or SSI, is 18 meters, 60 feet. The DJI Osmo Action 5 is depth rated down to 20 meters, 65 feet, meaning a lot of divers, majority of divers actually, can take this one without the housing. The X4 and GoPro Hero 13 is waterproof down to 10 meters, 33 feet. And for the Ace Pro 2 to 12 meters. Beyond that, you need a housing. Most of them has housing that's depth rated down to 60 meters, 200 feet. Some of these you can actually also get other, especially for the GoPro, you can get other housings that has a deeper depth rating. For the X4, even though it's depth rated down to 10 meters, you do need a housing for it because otherwise the stitching between the two lenses doesn't work. It works above water really well, it does that. But taking it below water, you'll see that the stitching doesn't work without the invisible dive casing for it. So that's important to know. It has a depth rating, which means that if water gets in, it works, it doesn't flood and doesn't break the camera like we saw with the cheap Amazon one. So going above the 10, 20 meters for these cameras, you do need a housing. We 100% recommend that you buy the company's own housing. Even though you can get cheaper options, that's the recommended. Unless you want to go deeper, then there's more expensive options for deeper than that, at least for the GoPro Hero 13 and the GoPro series. And these housings, it's a plastic housing. They have a double lat system that keeps it really safe and tight. And again, they are waterproof on its own, so having it in a housing and a waterproof casing is really a foolproof system using these action cameras underwater on a dive. Usability specifically for underwater filming, it's kind of all the same for all of these. You have to go into the settings and then activate the dive casing modes. And once you've done that, you can't use the touchscreen anymore, of course, because you put it in a casing. And as soon as you do that, you have the on and off button out here that actually changes mode. So you click that one to change from photo to video. And then you have the top button up here that will do the photo. If you want to turn it off, you can hold the on and off button and it will turn off. And again, hold it again to turn it on. Also, underwater casing modes, once it's off, if you click up here, it will turn off, do that video that it's doing. And then as soon as you stop the video, it will turn off again. So that's a few of the settings it has. It's quite easy to use underwater. So there's not really that big of a difference between these. The Instas are a bit different, you can say, in terms of that. So the Ace Pro 2, you actually can use hand gestures underwater. So like a stop hand will start or stop recording. Peace sign will do a photo. So if you're placing it somewhere, doing selfie motions on that, you can use that quite easily as well. So you don't have to fiddle with the buttons. Sometimes if you're a bit deep or wearing thick gloves, some of the buttons can be a bit tricky to push, and that's kind of all of the cameras. So having these hand gestures does something. The Insta X4, there's two buttons as well, on and off. They're both on the side. The only thing you have to be wary about is that it has to go down in one way. So basically having the buttons go to the right where the underwater buttons are as well. And it's quite easy. I've done that at least a few times, turning it the wrong way around so you can't access it. Once it's in the casing, you can still see the screen, but of course it's only facing one way. In a bit, we're going to take a look at the underwater footage coming out of these cameras. But before, I just want to tell you a bit about the screens and how they work underwater as well. So all of these has a nice large 2.5-inch screen, and some of them has a front screen as well, as you can see out here. With the GoPro Hero 13 and the Osmo Action 5, the front screen here is actually one you can use. It shows what you're filming, so really good for like a selfie mode or showing what you're filming if you're in front of the camera filming yourself. The Ace Pro 2 here has a front screen here, but it only shows you metrics like what kind of filming mode you're in, and I think battery time as well. And then you have the flip screen here. This flip screen works really well for 99% of the filming you do, or all of the above water filming if you're filming like this and you're like using hand gestures and so on. The problem is underwater, in the dive casing, it's flipped down and you can only see it, so you basically only have one screen to use. So I'm missing a bit in this one, that selfie camera mode. For the X4, it only has one screen. Usually I found that it's actually facing the other way, so where you are filming. But what happens is it's basically filming all the way around, so you don't need the screen. It will film everything. On that one, the Ace Pro does lose a bit of points for the underwater modes. Yeah, and to be honest, I don't really understand why they haven't just made this screen an actual feedback screen where you could see the whole video that you're filming. Especially because with the hand gestures, that would be super awesome. That said, if you're above 12 meters, so for like snorkeling or anything, it's waterproof like this. We've used it like this as well. The hand gestures work really well underwater. All right, so now on to the most important part of the review. Well, in my opinion at least, how is the footage from these cameras? How does it look when you take these underwater? We did the filming in both blue tropical, nice waters, and we did it in some greener, colder, still nice waters. But, well, depending on what kind of diver you are, you will, in this one, find an action camera that fits your needs. So if you're diving a lot in cold water, diving a lot in tropical waters, or if you're doing both, take a look at the footage from both. When I'm going through this, I'm going to talk about what I see. And if you want to go back on something, well, then just skip back in the video so you can see how the footage is looking again if I'm clipping in the clips too fast. Here we have the blue tropical nice water. Going clockwise, we start at the top right corner. We have the DJI Osmo Action 5. If we go down, still at the right side, we have the GoPro Hero 13. Then left corner, we have the Insta360 X4. That's the 360 camera. And then we have the Insta360 Ace Pro 2. That's the flip screen camera. You may sometimes notice a bit of blurriness in the Ace Pro 2, and that's because we have a bit of condensation happening at the top left corner. Next here, what you see is some of the greener, colder waters. You'll also notice sometimes we'll put 3 cameras up, sometimes we'll put 4 cameras up. It's because we weren't always diving with all cameras at once. First, let me say that some of this filming will be a bit subjective. It's what I see and what we see here at the team of DIVEIN, what my colleague Sylvia is seeing of how the footage is looking and what we're trying to highlight. What I would like you to do is actually make your own judgment. Look at the footage. Look at what we found. See, do you agree or not? Look at the footage and see what kind of footage do you like. Second up, this video and the focus of this is to help the average recreational diver, not a professional underwater photographer. So we didn't film iLog, we didn't film 8K. We kept everything 4K to make it easy to edit afterwards and easy to handle on a phone or on a computer. Afterwards, we didn't spend hours and hours of editing. We only did what's possible in the apps that follow along with the cameras. So add a underwater filter to it. That's the only thing we did. I will show how these apps works. Well, I'll come into that later. When looking at this fresh out of the camera, there are some key differences. Probably the most obvious one is the color. If we look at this clip here of a diver and freeze to frame, we can see that the Ace Pro 2 has a more desaturated look with a cool blue-gray hue to it. The GoPro 13 and the X4 are similar, but a bit more aqua-like. And then we have the DJI Osmo Action 5 that seems to be more blue and more, well, generally more saturated. Here again in this greener clip, when we apply the one-click in-app edits, the footage is enhanced. We can also see that again here with this clip of the Nudibrands X. I would say the key differences do remain. The next main difference in the footage is how the camera handles contrast. So the highlights and shadows, or how dark the blacks is and how bright the whites is, and how it's handling this. The first clip you see here, that's the GoPro 13. It has the flattest footage. There's no bright whites, there's no dark blacks. And really unlike what you see here with the DJI Osmo 5, where it's really dark blacks and white whites. When looking at the backplate here, or the eyes within the mask, despite being the largest clip here, it's actually barely visible on the DJI. So it looks really nice, but when you look at the details, it does become a bit difficult to see. A little more with the Ace Pro 2, and then more so as well with the GoPro 13 here. And when we apply the one-click app edits, the GoPro and the Ace Pro 2 do become noticeably brighter, so it really does a lot to it. We can see the same effect here as well with the more real shots. And we now also have the X4 in the frame, but the over contrast again of the DJI is really noticeable here with the facial structure, or the eyes and the mouth of the Montreal. It's actually really difficult to make out. Once we apply the edits, the Ace Pro 2 and the GoPro 13 looks the best with better details, color and clarity of the face and the surrounding colors. And when we freeze this frame here, the Ace Pro 2 has better coloring, and the GoPro 13 is a bit sharper as well. These same distinctions may seem to apply to greener footage as well. With some edited footage here, we can see again that the DJI has a higher contrast and saturation. Looking at Sylvia, my dive buddy's white regulator and tank, there's kind of like a halo effect with the DJI, and that's there with the H Pro 2, but a bit less, and it's not really there at all with the GoPro 13. I would say overall, GoPro 13 is doing really well here of footage-wise, and with the DJI, Sylvia's skin is too pink, but then again, the water is more blue, and the seagrass is more like a rusty red, so it's arguably more pleasant to actually look at the DJI's footage here. But when you are filming really bright whites and dark blacks, the editing that DJI is clearly applying to the footage, it kind of distorts that. The DJI Osmo Action 5 actually has a color sensor right here in front of the camera. So it's constantly reading the scene and adjusting the colors accordingly. And you can actually see this working because at some points in the video, I was filming a neo-green concrete hand lying at the bottom. And you can see how it's adjusting the light towards that and then changing everything else. And as soon as I film up here, you can see that it's slowly changing back. But what you will see happening with the DJI is that it will adjust throughout the dive. Another distinction, which you perhaps noticed earlier in the more real shot, is the clarity. When you look at the X4, there are big differences in clarities in the scene. If you look here, the edges of the clips are actually kind of blurry, and it's only really the sensor that has the focus. And that's really seen on smaller subjects like the Nudibrands X, or even medium subjects like the Morail. I wouldn't prefer the X4 shots. However, on divers or wider scenes with the blue waters and a subject or two further away like this one, you can pinpoint the exact focus, and it really makes a nice shot for that. So remember again that the X4 is a 360 camera, so you're not focused on anything before or after the dive where you then focus. So it's not comparable to the other cameras, kind of like this review, but we did think that you need this in because it is still an action camera that you can take diving. So it can film anywhere, and as soon as you're done filming it, you can actually focus on it. So the blurriness that you see at the edges is not really the edges of the camera, it's more the edges of the focus, so you can still just change the focus of it, and none of the other cameras can do that. As for the other three, the GoPro 13, H Pro 2, and the DJI, clarity is more similar. They have a constant clarity throughout the footage. We did notice some noise from the DJI, meaning the blue background waters are a bit more pixelated. You can see that in the Ray clip here. We also tested the camera's ability to handle dramatic changes in lights. In the first shot, we changed from the sun shining behind us to facing the sun. You can perhaps tell we're diving in quite shallow waters as well, so there was a lot of light. All three cameras seem to be handling this really well. Like mentioned before, this is really a subjective matter, so if you think one of the cameras is handling better than the other, then drop it in the comment below. We're also testing coming out of the water, so going from predominantly blue scene to a more colorful scene. Again, I would say there's no particular camera that did better or worse. Just as Sylvia is climbing up, the H Pro 2 is more peachy pink, but within a second or two, the camera is recalibrating and the colors are balanced again. Last, we performed this shake test with the 4 cameras. As you can see here, the shaking of the cameras is quite a bit, so I'm doing this a bit more dramatically than perhaps necessary. Not surprisingly, the X4 is doing the best, and that's because it's focusing afterwards and it's filming all the way around. And between the 3 other cameras, you'll be the judge of which one is best doing it. Again, you can see I'm shaking a lot, and I do think that the cameras do keep the footage quite still compared to how much I'm shaking it. So now that you've filmed with these underwater action cameras, next thing most of us want to do is share it on social media, send it to the moms or the wives or the kids. Well, Insta360, DJI, and GoPro have mobile editing apps. Insta360's is the winner by a long shot, and I will say GoPro's Quick is the sore loser. I've been using the Insta360 app for years, much longer than the DJI Memos or the GoPro Quick. So maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I have to say that it's really a great app, especially for the X4. You'd be forgiving for thinking that, okay, so 360 footage sounds great, but how the F am I supposed to handle all of this large and complex footage? Well, in the Insta360 app, it's really easy. you essentially make keyframes or checkpoints throughout the video and where you want the camera to film. So you can basically edit all of this video behind. So you're shooting with one camera that's basically shooting everything. And then you can go and choose the frames you want to use in your film afterwards. And with this Aquavision 2.0 that puts in an underwater filter, it's really making all of this footage look really, really nice. So adjustments are easy, and this also works for editing for the Ace Pro 2. Of course, you don't have to angle it, but it really works. So in the mobile app, you can also press auto, and then you can, it will actually do most of the editing for you, choose the frames and so on. So there's a lot of options for it. There's also tablet and desktop options. The tablet version is really great if you have a longer flight on the way back, where you can do the editing, but you can also do that on the app. And the desktop version is really good if you are doing more editing of this. So a lot of options. DJI has the DJI Memo app. It has a lot of the same features in terms of video editing, adjustment, also adding the underwater filter called Vivid Underwater. So again, putting warm and nice colors in. Then you have a slider where you can move it yourself and adjust how much of this filter you want to add on. One feature that the Memo is better at than the Insta360 is actually showing stats on the screen. So you can get all the stats from this one. It's showing depth and it's showing dive time, so you can put that on the camera as well. For both the Ace Pro and the Memo app, you can also connect like a Garmin app or any of the other dive computer apps, and you can sync in data as well. Garmin Connect will show you online sports like cycling, running, and all that. It does not connect to the Garmin Dive app, which is the one you're using when you're diving, so you can actually put all of your dive computer stats on these ones, except if you download a FIT file, and then you have to manually add this. So it's possible to get all your dive data in on these cameras, but it's just quite difficult. It works, but it's difficult. Whereas Osmo 5 can actually put the depth straight on the camera or on the video, which is really nice. And then we have the quick GoPro app. There are too many issues with this one. Firstly, it's not that good. Secondly, you have to pay for it. So the underwater filter on the GoPro is quite strange. And for the footage we have, it didn't do that like a positive boost to it. It does have all the editing tools like exposure, highlights, saturation, etc. So there's other free apps, and paying for it, you can do other things on your phone. And for these, the apps are free. They do really a lot better editing on that one. Then there's, of course, benefits of having the subscription for the GoPro. It doesn't only provide you with editing capabilities, it also gives you cloud storage on the GoPro storage, and it gives you discount on GoPro products. I've in the past bought GoPro products that were cheaper on GoPro with a yearly subscription than I could find in any other store. So that's at least a possibility. I just personally don't like that you have to buy a subscription to use an editing app, especially when it's free on the other cameras. If you are a complete GoPro diehard fan, I can see there's a reason to having the subscription. You get extra accessories on discount, and you can get all of the storage as well options. They have some publishing options as well through the GoPro system. Again, cloud storage is not something I use. I have a Google Drive subscription. You can get 2 terabytes for $120 a year, or you can get a Dropbox, same features. I don't think all is lost for the GoPro. The original action camera, the GoPro 13, is compatible with so many accessories, mounts, lenses, cases. There's also Backscatter doing these flipped lenses for the GoPro, so that's also an option that you can take a look at. It is really a great action camera, doing a lot in terms of footage, especially if you're editing also afterwards. There's a lot of settings you can do in terms of getting raw footage in. If you use the cameras, so for this one, as an action camera, it's still really good. If you're using the cameras mainly underwater, and you would like a underwater action camera, I think that the DJI Osmo Action 5 or the Ace Pro 2 are the better choices. Osmo 5, in terms of the underwater settings, the front screen works really well. You don't need the housing if you're just an open water diver. Ace Pro 2, in terms of this screen, works really great on top of the water, but the lack of that one and in a housing is losing a bit of points. All right, so now you've seen the footage. You've seen how this screen looks. You know a bit about the settings. So how do you make a decision of which of these underwater cameras to choose? I think if we start from the left here, the GoPro Hero 13, it's compatible with a whole universe of accessories, mounts, lenses, you name it. You can also change the lenses here for a bunch of other things. And as an action camera, GoPros are still great. There's a bunch of cool things that you can use this for, and it's really still the king as action cameras. Now, if you're only planning to use this camera as an underwater camera and you want an underwater action camera because they're great, small and handheld, I think the DJI Osmo Action 5 or the Insta Ace Pro 2 are the better choices. as the action camera handheld. The DJI has favorable features for diving, such as the 20 meters depth rating, depth sensors that will show depth on the screen, front screen, and also built-in storage, so you have 50 gigabyte built-in storage. I also think that the Ace Pro 2, although lacking some of the features like the front screen here and not the same depth sensors, does produce better footage. So it has dual chips, which works really well in low light conditions, and underwater in particular this really helps. The Ace Pro 2 can also do 8K filming. We didn't include any of this in the review, but 8K footage does give it some extra advantages if you're using that for anything. Do keep in mind that 8K films are really difficult to work on a phone especially. So we didn't include that, but it's still features it has, and a bunch of other real cool features that Insta is putting into their apps. A lot of auto editing as well. As you see here again, Ace Pro 2 versus Action 5 really depends on how much you like the details. And then footage from the GoPro versus Ace Pro 2 are really good. And they're better at this flat footage and gives you all the freedom of post-production or post-editing. So if you really want to play a lot with it and do a lot of editing, these are better than the DJI. Again, Insta360 app is really good, which makes all the editing really good for you and really a lot ahead of the GoPro 13. Now, coming into the X4, because I haven't talked much about that one in this comparison, this is a complete different. It's a game changer in terms of underwater shooting. We've been using it here at DIVEIN a lot and we love it. We use it a lot to film ourselves, of course, when we're out testing, but we also use it just to film around because it really works and it films the whole dive all the way around. So you don't need to think about where you're pointing it. You don't really need to think that much about how you're using it. We also tried using it attached on larger cameras where you can do focus on your photo or video, and then you still have a camera on top that's capturing everything. And it even gives you this really nice helicopter view of you as a diver. As you can see here, Sylvia diving around with the camera, you can see her as a whole diver. So you can use this on a lot of really cool ways. We had moments where we were filming with the X4, not realizing what we were filming, and something behind us. It was just capturing moments that we actually didn't see, that you can go in and relive your whole dive and see things that you actually didn't see. It might actually make you regret that you didn't turn around when a manta was swimming by you, but then again, at least you captured it on video, right? If you made it this far in the video, you're in for a treat. Here is how you can win a 7-night liveaboard trip on either the Blue Horizon or the Blue Melody. It's super easy to enter. All you have to do is subscribe to our channel and hit the button, the like button on this video. Then in the comments below, tell us which of these underwater cameras you would like, or which one's the favorite and why. And then last but not least, sign up to our newsletter. It's the first link in the description. This is also where we'll announce the winners of this giveaway. All the terms are in the description, so check those out if you want to. But this is your chance to experience some world-class diving on a beautiful liveaboard boat. Like I said before, there's no clear winner between these cameras, but if you still haven't decided which one, go back up and rewatch some of the footage, see which camera is best for you, see which one really works best in the kind of diving that you're doing. And whichever camera you will be diving, you won't be disappointed. Once you've found what you're looking for, let us know in the comments which of the cameras you think deserves to be the best underwater camera. And if you have any questions to it, leave them down below in the comments. We'd love to answer you as well. And as always, happy diving.